Alright guys, today I'm going to talk about extinction. First the definition, the effects of extinction, and the resistance to extinction. First of all, there's operant extinction. Operant extinction no longer reinforcing the operant behavioral response. So this is trying to extinguish a behavior that you find unsettling, or maybe a behavior you want your subject to no longer continue. The ultimate extent is reducing behavior's probability to zero. So it's similar to shaping, and it's a procedure that has to be carried out through a series of steps. Okay, so the effects of extinction. There is the initial and temporary effects to extinction. You need to understand that there is going to be behaviors that your subject or animal will create during the extinctual process, such as extinctional burst, emotional behaviors, frustration, such as the emotion that you're going to have when you are using the extinctual procedures. Your subject's not going to enjoy it at first, and it's going to be kicking, screaming. An animal might become somewhat aggressive. However, this is part of the extinctual process. There's an increase in behavioral variability, so expect a immediate change. There is resurgence, which is resurgence is interesting because resurgence is an effort to get attention. So you're going to see an increase in attention from your subject, and they're going to expect you to not continue to have an extinction in behavior. There's going to be a depression moment, which will last longer. It could vary between resurgence or depression. In depression, your subject may become less active. Maybe your child that you're working with will no longer respond or seem sad or put their head down. That's part of extinction. Most occur fairly soon and disappear relatively quickly. So you need to maintain focus when this is happening, because this is part of the process of extinction. The other effects will be spontaneous recovery. Increases in response rate relatively to the end of a prior session after a break in time. So if you cut your stimulus or your reward, your subject will continue to look for that reward, and quite possibly increase the rate in which they cry, or maybe the animal will have a burst of activity in search for that reward. However, a recovery of the extinguished responses after sufficient break in time. So you may have a variation that increases and then decreases. Typically, you want to use a 24-hour break, and eventually that behavior will flatline. So you cannot give up. You got to cause the subject or your animal to essentially give up. They may still use a burst of old behaviors, and it's highly effective getting rid of it is using extinction. Ultimately, the response rate will eliminate entirely. There's a variability of babies trying to sleep, which usually starts with emotional burst, and within 3 nights, you could adjust the child's sleeping schedule by slowly ignoring the child until the child starts to realize that the child is independent and has its own. It starts to become more aware of its behaviors and how it's not receiving the attention that you're reinforcing essentially for the child's behavior. Resistance to extinction. It will take longer under intermittent reinforcement. You learn that you need to persist, so you need a partial reinforcement effect. The resistance to extinction takes longer. However, CRF schedule, which is a continual reinforcement schedule, has a very low RTE. So let's use the example of two different cars. You have a 2020 Toyota, which is a reliable new car, which would be a continual reinforcement. So that would be a continuous reinforcement because the car starts every time. So it's on a schedule that's continual. While an old BMW, like a 1980s BMW, maybe it's used, maybe it's 200,000 miles, will be a variable ratio schedule for that car working. So if it has a high reliability and you're trying to extinguish the behavior, maybe the car doesn't start. So the behavior of it starting is very reliable. So you'll give up immediately trying to start the brand new Toyota. However, if it's a variable ratio, kind of like an intermittent, you'll try over and over again because you're used to the car not starting anyways, because the variable ratio of 5, which would be the old BMW, would keep you persisting on that behavior. So you're focusing on extinguishing rapidly. Intermittent schedules have a very high RTE. So remember, CRF schedules, a continuous ratio, have a low RTE, and intermittent have a very high. So intermittent schedules will always be harder to extinguish. The subject's going to always be prepared for variabilities. To decrease RTE, to make behavior easier to extinguish, you need to set them into a CRF, then cut off the subject. So you want a high consistency, so your subject believes that it's getting what it needs, and then cutting it off, which will be more surprising and more abrupt instead of the intermittent schedule. Alternate multiple episodes of extinctions with multiple episodes of reinforcement. You have to switch in between towards the end of it, and that's how you get your best strategy. Combine extinction of inappropriate behaviors with reinforcement of incompatible behaviors. So let's see how I can explain this. You have a cat which is messing up your couch or your furniture. First, you have to the cat is receiving reinforcement every time you pay attention to it when it destroys your furniture. So now your cat believes that this behavior is contingent with him scratching the furniture. Say it's a guy cat. And instead of giving the cat attention for scratching the furniture, which will continue to happen, you need to bring in a scratching post and give no attention to the cat when the cat is scratching the furniture. Instead, take your scratching post and isolate it from your furniture. And when the cat sees the scratching post and he starts scratching that object, then that's when you decide to reinforce that behavior. So you're combining extinction of inappropriate behavior with reinforcement of an incompatible behavior. So you're taking that behavior that you find as an annoyance, and instead taking that and reinforcing it towards another behavior. So anyways, thank you for watching this video, and I will continue to try to explain classical conditioning and operant extinction and other methods of psychology. Thank you.